Why was Joaquin El Chapo Guzman so eerily still inside his cell at Colorado's ADX Florence, the notorious Alcatraz of the Rockies? What news had reached him that rendered the evening's broadcast irrelevant? The world outside buzzed with the shocking report. His son, Ovidio Guzman Lopez, had been sentenced to death in the US. How did this moment shape the fate of one of the world's most infamous drug lords and his family? Let's find out. Ovidio, also known as El Raton, had been captured during a daring and bloody raid by Mexican authorities in January 2023, which resulted in Culiacan, the capital of Sinaloa, being in flames. This was more than simply a setback for Guzman's family. It was a threat to the supremacy of the Sinaloa cartel and an insult to his legacy. For many years, the cartel has been able to adjust to every move made by law enforcement by operating with calculated precision. El Chapo himself had escaped and rebuilt his empire after being captured many times. However, Ovidio's extradition to the United States, his trial, and his death sentence were a personal and public attack on the Guzman name. It was a wound that demanded retaliation from a cartel that lived on fear and loyalty. El Chapo went away from the chaos while his network remained active and he sat quietly in his supermax cell. There has always been more than one man in the Sinaloa cartel. It was an empire founded on generations of loyalty, powered by fear and money, and upheld by a brutal code. Revenge comes first. Miles away in the untamed Sierra Madre Mountains of Mexico, the cartel's leadership met covertly. The United States had gone too far, and that was the clear message. Ovidio's death sentence constituted a declaration of war as well as a kind of retribution. The time to strike back has arrived. The first indications of retaliation were faint, hardly perceptible. On his way to a routine meeting, a DEA informant in Guadalajara disappeared. Days later, his body was discovered dumped on a distant highway with the haunting inscription, "You stole blood," cut into his chest. "We'll take yours now." Attacks on important justice system players followed. Judges engaged in the extradition case of Ovidio received anonymous threats. On his porch, a beheaded goat's head was discovered when he woke up. Unmarked cars followed the prosecutors. The mysterious operatives of the cartel seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once, despite the US Marshal Service's frantic response to safeguard witnesses and court officials. No one was spared, not even the Mexican officials who had helped kidnap Ovidio. A local police commander was assassinated in broad daylight in Culiacan after his vehicle was assaulted by individuals brandishing heavy weapons. No one was untouchable, and that was the clear message. The cartel, however, was not finished. Donald Trump, who they saw as the face of their misery, came into their sights as a more symbolic figure. The United States has vigorously sought for Ovidio's arrest and extradition throughout the Trump administration. Trump's tough-on-crime stance and his harsh drug cartel policies have been widely reported, making him a despised figure among cartel leaders. Now, in 2024, Trump was in the news again as a re-election candidate. His supporters were boisterous, his rallies were enormous, and his rhetoric remained constant. This presented a chance for the cartel. They intended to send a message that would be heard all across the world, not only exact revenge. American intelligence agencies started intercepting conversations regarding a possible plan against high-profile figures. The warnings were ambiguous at first, then they started to become specific. Infiltrate a Trump rally using cartel operatives posing as event personnel, according to one intercepted message. A concerted cyber attack on Trump's campaign infrastructure was mentioned by another. These situations had an undeniably sophisticated level, despite the fact that they looked far-fetched. The Secret Service increased security around the former president and started an internal investigation. The threats were officially denied by Trump's staff, who deemed them to be overblown. However, the tension was evident behind the scenes. It took place in Phoenix, Arizona, during a rally. As Trump launched his ferocious speech, the audience was electric and roared. The low hum of a tiny, almost quiet drone flying over the stage was drowned out by the cries of his supporters waving placards. Most people didn't see the drone, but the Secret Service did. While snipers on the roofs took aim, agents quickly rushed to protect Trump. Before the drone could make it to the stage, it was shot down. Examining the wreckage, investigators discovered that it had been altered to hold explosives, a rudimentary but successful assassination attempt. The story went viral in the media, but the Secret Service played it down, calling it a security breach without providing any more information. It was clear that the cartel wasn't playing a game behind closed doors. It started with the drone attack. Cartel operatives intensified their attacks over the next weeks. Several individuals were hurt when a tiny explosive device was detonated outside a federal court complex in San Diego. Minutes before the explosion, another bomb was discovered close to a DEA field office in Texas. Violence like this wasn't just random. The cartel could strike at any time, any place. Each attack was calculated to send a message. The atmosphere became grim in Washington, D.C. The cartel's dispersed structure made it virtually hard to predict their next move, despite the fact that intelligence agencies operated around the clock. The top operatives of the cartel, known as Los Fantasmas, were renowned for their precision and discretion. They left no loose ends or traces behind. The cartel changed its strategy even as the United States increased security. Sensitive material was leaked to the media as they started to target Trump's inner circle. Some of it was made up, and some of it was true. The news cycle was dominated by stories about purported business dealings between Trump's organization and dubious figures in Mexico. It was a double-edged sword for Trump. Framing himself as the victim of a violent and corrupt adversary, he utilized the attacks to rally his base. But his campaign started to suffer as a result of the ongoing threats. The number of public appearances was reduced. Secret Service operatives now outnumbered supporters at his rallies, which had earlier been impromptu and exuberant, but now seemed more like military operations. El Chapo was always more interested in making a statement than in physically killing Trump. The cartel aimed to demonstrate to the world that they could not be subdued by even the most robust nation. They wanted to strike fear into everyone and serve as a reminder of their power. However, the United States was also not giving up. Targeting cartel strongholds across the border, joint operations between the DEA and Mexican authorities stepped up. Millions of dollars worth of assets were recovered, supply lines were interrupted, and dozens of operatives were captured. To keep the war going, the cartel retaliated violently for each little victory, killing informants and attacking police enforcement. The conflict between the cartel and the United States intensified as the weeks stretched into months. Trump had to adjust as his campaign continued to face threats. Framing himself as a warrior against evil, his speeches became increasingly belligerent. And El Chapo, what? He kept writing in his notebook in his lonely, succumbing cell. A few thought it was a journal. Others believed it was a code, a means of communicating commands to his external operatives. There was no doubt that El Chapo's influence persisted in spite of the prison walls. The Sinaloa cartel is a formidable and well-established organization. Could the US government ever fully eliminate it? Or was this a fight that would never stop, a never-ending cycle of violence and retaliation? The stalemate is still going on for now. While the cartel lurks in the shadows, preparing for their next move, Trump runs his campaign under continual threats. What about El Chapo? Even though he is imprisoned, his legacy of strength, retaliation, and resistance still looms large over the world. What do you think? Will the US finally find a way to bring the cartel to its knees, or is this a fight that no one can truly win? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more such exciting content. See you in the next video.